Okay, good evening everybody and welcome to Purim series part 2. We had begun speaking about Purim and we have begun speaking about different characters in the Talmud. Last week our series had begun Purim in the Talmud, and last week's topic was the Jew who wouldn't bow. My intention on making that a title is because you may notice that the three main characters of the Megillah are Mordechai, Esther, both against Haman. Last week we had discussed and highlighted Mordechai and everything that he had done. By my title this evening of the Royal Face-Off, my intent is to highlight the Jewish heroine of the day, and that is Queen Esther. And tonight I'm going to endeavor in demonstrating to all of you how the Esther was truly the one who is the hero of the Megillah, more than anyone else, which would help us by the end of the class to get a better appreciation why the Megillah is deliberately called Megillas Esther and not Megillas Mordechai, despite everything that Mordechai HaTzadik had done on behalf of the Jewish people and his self-sacrifice. We're going to demonstrate tonight how it is Esther's actions, and it's Esther's actions that really began the miracle of Purim, more than even what we think until now, when we raise the one who reads in the Megillah raises his voice by the beginning of chapter 6. By Lailahu, on that night, the king's sleep was disturbed, and we highlight, it even says in the Talmud, that this is the moment that Nadad Ashnas Malchus Shalaylam, the king of the universe, his sleep was awakened. This begins the whole nace. But here I'm going to demonstrate to you, where does all the drama really begin, and where do we see the hand of Hashem stepping in to help? It really begins with Esther, and only because of Esther's self-sacrifice, as we will see tonight. So, a little recap. So we spoke about the rise of Haman last week. We spoke about Mordechai's determination to stand strong and to not bow down to Haman, demonstrating to everybody what it means to be a proud Jew and to stand up for your conviction, to stand up for what's right, even at a cost. And what was the cost? In between, Haman plots to kill all Jews, something that has never happened, and in all of history probably has not happened ever since. The idea of plotting to annihilate every single Jew, man, woman, and child in the entire world in one day. In one day. The closest that we can get to understanding the horrific and barbaric atrocity, the closest thing we can relate to in this generation is the Holocaust, but even then was only a period of time. I'm not belittling the Holocaust at all, but you think about it, as the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, the Nazis, all they were able to accomplish was at least those who were under their jurisdiction, meaning the Jews of Europe, in Eastern Europe. However, the Jews of America, as we know, were safe. Here, Haman was the prime minister of the king Achashverosh, the king of the entire world at that time, and they were to be killed. The Jews, men, women, and children were to be killed in one day. All Jews. Not a single Jew in the entire world was safe. What happens? Mordechai hears the news. He basically relates to Esther that this is the moment, perhaps why God had put her into this position as queen, to save the Jewish people. Only she can be instrumental. Esther at first said, "You're asking me to take my life. You're asking me to take my life. This is certain death." Shalom. Says Mordechai to her, "You got to do this. This is your calling." And so Esther says to Mordechai, "Okay, if that is the case, let all the Jewish people know we need to fast. We need to fast for 3 days, and after 3 days I will go to the king, and if I die, I die." That is a basic summary of what is going on. And with this, we enter chapter 5. Chapter 5 begins highlighting Esther's move. and we're going to see her heroism. We're going to see her actions, how not only are they deliberate, but she truly is the hero of the day. We see how she risks her life and puts her life on the line time after time after time, literally facing death, literally being a handbreadth away from death, escaping death many, many times. And so let's begin. Chapter 5. Verse 1, this is source number 1 in your sheets. Vayehi Bayom Hashlishi, and it was on the third day. Vatilbash Esther Malchus, and Esther put on royal apparel, royal garments. Vata'amoid bachatza beis hamelech hapnimis, and she stood in the inner courtyard of the house of the king. Noichach beis hamelech, that's the inner courtyard, but still outside the palace, facing the palace of the king. V'hamelech yoshev al kisei malchusei, and the king is sitting on his royal throne. Beveis hamalchus, in the house of the king. Noichach pesach habayis, facing the entrance door going into his chamber. Okay. So there are a couple of things about this verse that I want to highlight to everybody and lead us right into the discussion. Number 1, and it was on the third day. Third day of what? Doesn't really tell us. Now, simply we can understand the third day of the fast. Third day. What day was this? What day of the year? Was it truly the third day? Was it truly the third day since the fast? Not so simple. Not so simple, as we will see. Another thing I want to highlight, point number 2 I want to highlight from this verse, leading into our discussion tonight, is the garments that she put on. And what does it mean that she stood in the courtyard? What does all this mean? It's very cryptic. There's a lot of insights that we have to see from here, as we will. So the first thing I want to do is to highlight the fact, and it was on the third day. And I want to introduce that by bringing to you another verse that says, and it was on the third day. And to draw a comparison. We must understand that the entire story of Purim mirrors that of the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. After all, I'm jumping ahead here. In chapter 9 and chapter 10, the last 2 chapters of the Megillah, it says, V'kibel haYehudim es asher chelu la'ases. And the Jewish people accepted upon themselves what they had begun doing. Welcome. Please make yourself comfortable. And not only that, but later on, I believe it's in chapter 10, not chapter 10, the end of chapter 9 still, Kimu v'kiblu haYehudim, that the Jewish people, they accepted and they took upon themselves everything they had begun to do. And our commentaries explain what is it that they had begun to do, again, by the giving of the Torah. By the giving of the Torah. When the Torah was first given on Mount Sinai, the Jews had not completely accepted the Torah yet. And it is only in the story of Purim that they had accepted upon themselves the Torah. What does this mean? So, our commentaries explain the meaning of all of this. The giving of the Torah, as much as the Jewish people accepted upon themselves the giving of the Torah, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will take the Torah, we will do, and only afterwards we will listen. At the end of the day, it was all forced upon them. If you look in the commentaries in Rashi, Kaf aleim har kegigas. When the Jewish people received the Torah on Mount Sinai, God brought the mountain on top of them, dangling on top of them like it was going to crash. And so the Jewish people were compelled at that very moment. They were compelled to receive the Torah. Take a moment to welcome everybody. Those who have just walked in, please make yourself comfortable. Make sure that there's food that's being shared. The food is for everybody, again, sponsored by Anonymous. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Anonymous and family.
Thank you.
I always see a hi from Shalom Dadon as we begin the class. Usually I get a hi from Moshe Chaim. We're blessed that Moshe Chaim is actually here tonight. And good evening, Ilana. always watching live, so it's a pleasure to actually see you here in person. Now you get to see all the herring that I have in front of me. I'm just joking. No herring. We're on a diet. So a recap. Okay, so a recap of what we had just begun speaking about. We are drawing comparisons between the story of Purim and the giving of the Torah of Mount Sinai, how it's one sequence. Why? What's the proof of that? Because in chapter 9, no less than 2 times we mentioned that the Jewish people accepted upon themselves in the story of Purim what they had originally accepted upon, what they had originally began to accept upon themselves by the giving of the Torah. The Jewish people did not accept the Torah fully when they received it on Mount Sinai. After all, the commentaries explain, and the Talmud says, Kaf aleim har kegigas. God actually took the whole mountain and was dangling it literally on top of the Jewish people like this, saying, either you accept the Torah or that's it. So, yes, they did say Nasa v'nishma, we will do and we will hear, but did they accept it fully? Not so fully. Comes the Megillah in chapter 9, in the verses of the Megillah tells us, V'kibel ha-Yehudim, the Jews accepted upon themselves what they had begun to accept prior. So therefore we have a clear comparison between the giving of the Torah and the story of Purim. I keep going. So where do we have in the giving of the Torah this concept of, and it was on the 3rd day, quote unquote? Do we have any more copies? Everyone has? So we're up to source number 2. Source number 1 was the opening verse of chapter 5. And it was on the 3rd day that Esther put on royal garments and came to meet the king Achashverosh, facing possible death. Where else do we have it? It was on the 3rd day. We have it in source number 2 by the giving of the Torah. Vayehi bayom hashlishi, and it was on the 3rd day, b'yos haboker, in the morning. Vayehi kol suvakim vanon kavid alahar v'kol shefach chazak mevechar dekol amasher v'machane, and there was thunder, lightning, a dense cloud upon the mountain, a very loud blast of a horn, shofar, and all the people who were in the camp trembled. This was referring to the morning of the giving of the Torah. So we have a 3rd day and we have the 3rd day. What is this concept of a 3rd day? Of course we're drawing comparisons to the giving of the Torah, but what is the significance of the 3rd day? Understanding that it was Esther and Mordechai that devised the plan that they were going to mobilize all the Jewish people to fast for no less than 3 days. What's this concept of 3 days? Why? Why 3 days? So, says the Talmud, it's actually brought in Medrash Rabbah, that there is a concept of 3 days. And that is source number 3. Vayehi bayom hashlishi, and it was on the 3rd day. You see it in English as well. La'olam ein Yisrael nesunim batzara yosem mishloishes yamim. The Jewish people are never placed under trouble for more than 3 days. Sheharei ba'avram kisiv, it says by Abraham, Bayom hashlishi vayisa Avraham es eina vayarasa makam rachok. Abraham on the 3rd day he lifted his eyes and saw the place from afar. This is of course talking about when he went with the intention to sacrifice his son Isaac on the altar. We know many of us know the commentaries that there was a lot of the green button. Many of us know the commentaries explaining all of the obstacles that Abraham faced while he was traveling to the mountain. There was a river in the way. There was the angel, the Satan, was trying to disrupt them. When it comes to the tribes, we also see that Joseph, when they came to confront Joseph accused his brothers of being spies, and when they came down to Egypt, and he placed them in prison for 3 days. No more than 3 days. Yonah, by Jonah, it says, Jonah, he was also in the fish for 3 days, and only after 3 days, God said that was enough. And furthermore, when it comes to the coming of the Messiah, when it comes to the coming of Mashiach, when we will experience the resurrection of the dead, Techias HaMesim, it says, the dead will become resurrected 3 days into the coming of Mashiach, and no later than that, because it's enough suffering that we do not experience the resurrection of the dead, and God only puts suffering and trouble on us for 3 days maximum. skipping a few lines. V'gam hanes hazen nasa b'seiv sheshel matanisan, and we see, as we will soon see, the miracle of Esther also happened at the end of 3 days of fasting. Hadahu dichsiv. This is the meaning of our verse in the Megillah. Vayhi bayom hashishi v'tilbash Esther malchus. And on the third day, Esther put on royal garments. So we see that there is a significance of 3 days. What day of the year was this third day? Doesn't tell us the third day of what. It tells us. We understand from literal sense that it was the third day of their fast. But when was that? And here we come to the Talmud. After all, the class is all about Purim in the Talmud. So, in the Talmud, we have a discussion about the third day. But first, I want to bring it to you in the commentary of Rashi in the actual verses. It says, Vayihi Bayom Hashishi, and it was on the third day. Rashi comes along and tells us, what day of the year this was. Not on this verse, but on the verse right before it, which is the last verse of the previous chapter, chapter 4. Why? You see, when Esther and Mordechai had that discussion, I saw you were watching live before you entered. You're still watching live according to this thing.
Oh.
But it's all right.
Just,
as you see, as we say in the ethics of our fathers, know what's above you. There's an eye that sees, there's an ear that hears. That's referring to today's technology. So Mordechai and Esther had this discussion about instituting a 3-day fast. And after that was done, the last verse of the previous chapter, chapter 4, says as follows, Vayava Mordechai. And Mordechai came to pass. And he did. Vayas kachal asher tzivsa alav Esther, and he did everything that Esther instructed him to do, namely to go around and mobilize all the Jewish people to begin fasting for 3 days. Now the word Vayavar, avar means to pass. It also means, like from the word avera. Avera means a transgression. So based on that meaning, what does it mean, Vayava Mordechai, and Mordechai transgressed? On that, Rashi tells us, Al das lehis anis beyutes rishon shel beyomtev rishon shel Pesach. What does it mean? Mordechai went ahead and transgressed everything that Esther instructed him to do. Explains Rashi, on transgressing the law of fasting on the first day of the holiday of Passover, Pesach. Because behold, when did the fast begin? It began on Yud Daled, on the 14th of Nisan, that is the day before Pesach, Passover. The second day was Tesvav, the 15th, the first day of Passover. And the third day of fasting was on the 16th, namely the second day of Passover. Sheharei b'yom Yud Gimel nichtavu hasefarim. Why? Because when was the decree actually written and issued? It was issued on the 13th. It was issued on the 13th. So therefore, the following day began the 3 days of fasting, the 14th, the 15th, and the 16th. And as we know, the 15th and 16th, the second and third day of the fasting, happened to be the first and second day of Passover. So when the verse says Mordechai transgressed, that's what we are alluding to. Transgressed meaning told everybody we need to fast, even though we are going to transgress fasting on Passover. So therefore, no matzah, no maror, no 4 cups of wine. And remember, this was Persia. This is the diaspora outside the land of Israel. So they still had 2 days of Passover, Yom Tov. They had 2 Seder nights because they were outside the land of Israel. But they were still fasting both those days. So that year, all Jewish people throughout the world did not have a Passover Seder, not the first night and not the second night. That's what we're talking about transgressing. Okay, where does Rashi get this from? Rashi is getting this from the Talmud. The Talmud brings this up. But it's interesting because the Talmud brings this up and introduces to us a possible contradiction in Rashi. I'm sorry, I didn't tell everybody. What I just read to you was source number 4. That was what I just read to you was source number 4. Vayavar Mordechai al das, Mordechai passed, he transgressed in parentheses. By fasting on the first festive day of Pesach, he fasted on the 14th, the 15th, the 16th. For the letters written out, the decrees were issued on the 13th, the day before. So the following day, the 14th, that's when the fast begins. Where is Rashi is getting this? The origin of this is discussed in the Talmud. In the Talmud on page Tes Zayin Amud Aleph, page 16, side A. Over there, however, there is a little bit of a contradiction in Rashi. Why? Because in page 16, side A in the Talmud, we're going to jump the story a little bit. There was a parade. Mordechai is placed on a high horse and paraded through town. So shall be done to the man who the king wishes to honor. We're not here to actually talk about the basic details of the story. We're coming to talk about insights. The basic story of Esther, you can open and read it in the verses anytime that you wish. But there was a parade. In fact, next week, when I talk about collusions and delusions, we're going to be talking about that and how it connects to the overall scheme. But over there it says, after this parade, says the Talmud, Vayashav Mordechai al Shar HaMelech. Mordechai, after this parade, he was wearing royal garments. He was riding on the king's horse, wearing the king's crown. After the parade, Vayashav Mordechai al Shar HaMelech. Mordechai returned to the gates of the king. Amar Rav Sheshes. What is Rav Sheshes tells us? What is this alluding to? Right now, I'm in source number 5. It means Sheshav l'sakei l'tanisai. He returned to wearing sackcloth and fasting. Fasting? He was still fasting? So on that, Rashi tells us, Ulatanise, what does it mean fasting? Yom shlishi l'tanisaya. This was the third day of his fasting. And these words are not I did not include in the source sheet. That they began fasting on the 14th of Nisan. It was the third day. It was the third day that the messengers actually began running out and issuing the decree. Stop right there. Contradiction. Why is it a contradiction? Rashi just told us the third day that we begin chapter 5 is the third day from when the messengers began running out. The messengers began running throughout the kingdom to carry out the decree that was just written. Now, what day was that? It was on the same day. Issues were issued and decreed on the 13th. That very day, the messengers ran out to proclaim, to publicize the decree of the king. What was the decree that we're talking about? The annihilation of all the Jews, men, women, and children on a single day. When was that? It was on the 13th. So now, if it was the 13th that they began running out, and as Rashi says, it's the 13th that they began fasting, well, 1 second. Then what day is the third day? 13th, 14th, 15th. 15th. Not the 16th. You see, Rashi in the verses said, based over here, he said that they fasted on the 14th, 15th, and 16th. Based on the Rashi in the Talmud, they fasted on the 13th, 14th, and 15th. We're a day off here. It's a contradiction. So who's right? Rashi's contradicting himself. But who's right? When was this third day? It becomes even more puzzling. When I will tell you a little secret. This day that Haman was hanged, which by the way was the day after the parade, is actually brought down in Jewish law and fixed down as a Jewish law. So therefore, the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, actually brings as Jewish law what day Haman was hanged, which would follow the day after the parade. Now, based on our contradiction, that would make a lot. We have to understand what day was it. According to the verses according to Rashi inside the Megillah, where they fasted on the 14th, 15th, and 16th, based on that, when was Haman hanged? The next day was the 17th. Based on the Talmud, that they began fasting on the 13th, the 14th, and 15th, when was Haman hanged? On the 16th, not the 17th. Which day is right? Shulchan Aruch actually brings in, the Pesach Yosef actually brings in, on Siman Taf Tzadik, Hilchos Pesach, he brings that on the second day of Pesach, when's the second day of Passover? The 16th. The Magen Avram over here brings a custom. Yesh lases b'yom sheni b'seuda eze davar l'seudas Esther shabayom ahu nitla haman. On the second day of Passover, many people have the custom that they do something significant by the meal. Now we're talking about the second day, not the second Passover Seder. The second day of Passover, by daytime, during the Seudah, during the meal, the festive meal that we have on the second day of Passover, people have a custom that they do something significant by the meal to commemorate the fact that on that day Haman was hanged. The Shalah, bringing the Shalah HaKadosh. The Alter Rebbe also brings it over here. He brings V'toiv lasis ezadav b'suda b'yom sheni l'zecher l'sudas Esther shahaisa b'yom zeh shabai b'yom nitla Haman. And it's good to do something on the second day of festivities, the second day of Passover by the meal. It's appropriate to do something to commemorate the fact that on this day Haman was hanged. So what day has it been established in Jewish law? The 16th. So does that mean that Rashi in the Megillah is contradicting himself? Does that mean that Rashi in the Megillah, when he says that Haman was hanged on the 17th, at least he's alluding to that, he was incorrect? Contradiction. So apparently it's the Talmud. The Talmud, that's the correct one. So who's correct? So Lubavitcher Rebbe. Lubavitcher Rebbe gives us a beautiful insight. He says the commentaries explain to us that how did Mordechai know? Opening verse of chapter 4, which is not our discussion tonight. Mordechai yadas kol asher nasa. Mordechai knew exactly what was going on. And Mordechai tore his garments and cried out. How did he know? How did he know what was going on? We have to understand that originally the decree was not supposed to be well known to everybody. It was not supposed to be well known. Haman was trying to keep it a secret. And the problem was, he wasn't keeping a secret very well. He told the people in the palace, this is going to be a secret as long as you don't tell anybody. Right. So therefore they told people, okay, we have a secret. We're not going to tell you. Unrelated to this, the Rebbe actually quotes a previous Rebbe, said a few times, there are 3 types of people who keep secrets. This is a quote from the previous Rebbe. 3 types of people who keep secrets. One person, it's very, very obvious that he has a secret, he or she has a secret, and is just not going to share it to you what it is, but it's very clear that it's a secret. That's one type of person. A second type of person, you can't tell that there's a secret, that the person is holding a secret, but there's an instinct, there's a gut feeling, there's something there. They're not going to tell you they have a secret, but there's something there. And then the best secret holding is someone that you cannot even tell that they have a secret. That's the highest of them all. And we're going to see that Esther was able to do the best of all 3. So Haman was trying to keep it as a secret. And if you see all the barbaric people throughout history, all of those monsters throughout history, including the Nazis, you'll see that their methodology of carrying out evil things was to try to keep it as a secret. I mean, if you study Holocaust history, you'll know the Nazis were trying to cover their trails every bit of the time. They had every intention to destroy all evidence, to destroy all the camps, burn it to the ground, burn all the documents, erase all trace. And heaven forbid, if they actually had succeeded in doing so, then the people actually start believing the Holocaust deniers. Right? The fact that it's a miracle that there is some evidence, so that people who are trying to deny the Holocaust are obviously shut down by the clear evidence that we have. But this is the methodology of evil people, barbarics, that they tried to hide their trails. And Haman was no different. He was the Nazi of his time. He was trying to annihilate all the Jews, and he was trying to keep it as a secret. So how did Mordechai know about it? So Mordechai yadas kol shenasa. He knew what happened. How? So the commentators explain he actually had a revelation of Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi told him. But there are 2 versions. There are 2 opinions of when did he have this revelation. One opinion says that he had the revelation in a dream. Another opinion says, no, not in a dream. Elijah literally appeared to him and told him, quick, you must do something. There's an evil decree, a terrible decree hanging over the Jewish people. You must do something about it. So says the Rebbe, this is brilliant. Says the Rebbe, we can appreciate the difference between the two opinions of when the 3 days had begun. According to the opinion that the revelation happened in the dream, it stands to reason that on the 13th of Adar, the decree was issued. Mordechai did not know about it yet. He heard about it in a dream. The dream must have followed when the decrees were issued. Now, it wouldn't make sense that Mordechai would just go to sleep in the middle of the day. So we must assume that when did Mordechai hear about it? The following night when he went to sleep. Now, Mordechai, of course, would immediately do something about it, but only by the following day. So therefore, based on this opinion that Mordechai only received the news in his dream by Elijah the prophet, he only began fasting on the 14th, the following day, the 15th, and the 16th, and Haman would have been hanged on the 17th. According to the opinion that no, it was not in a dream, but Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, actually appeared to him in person, when would he appear? Would it make sense that Eliyahu would wait a day or two before coming and revealing himself to Mordechai? He would have told him immediately. When was that immediately in person? On the 13th, when the decree was issued. Now, stands to reason, Mordechai, understanding the terrible decree at hand and knowing his responsibility, the fate of Jewish history rests on his shoulders, Mordechai would not waste a second. And he would immediately summon Esther and have a discussion with her about issuing a decree to all the Jewish people that we must fast for 3 days. Immediately, which would mean that he would account the 13th day as well. That very day, he would not waste a minute. Based on that, when did Mordechai begin fasting? On the 13th, the 14th, the 15th, and therefore Haman was hanged on the day after the fasting on the 16th. So therefore, it stands to reason that the Talmud version of Rashi is correct. Right. So why did Rashi contradict himself? So therefore, in many places, the Rebbe continues to explain, in many places, Rashi was very clear that when he comes to explain actual scripture and actual writing, like the Chumash, the prophets, Torah, prophets, and writings, he's not coming to write aliba de hilchasa. His point is not to write and to explain things according to practical Jewish law. He's coming to explain things so that everyone can understand the simple understanding of the writings. The Talmud, however, as we all know, is the origin of Jewish law. All Jewish law is based off the Talmud. So therefore, when Rashi brings an interpretation of the story in the Talmud, he's bringing it according to what's Jewish law. And that is why we actually follow the ruling Jewish law now, based on the Talmud. With all said and done, now we understand that when did this actually happen? When was this third day? Third day is on the first day of Pesach, first day of Passover. This is when the story occurs. What story? Source. Back to source number 1. That on the third day she came on the third day. So now we explained on the third day. We move forward. On the third day, this is colluding with the giving of the Torah. Everything is connected. The third day represents the end of all suffering. Jewish people are only put under stress for 3 days, as the Medrash Rabbah explained to us. And in conclusion, the third day, what day of the year was this? Based on the Talmud, the ruling of the Talmud and Rashi, we are talking about the first day of Passover. So what happened? What happened was, back to source number 1, Vatilbash Esther Malchus. And Esther put on royal apparel. That is loose translation. Because the way to say royal apparel, royal garments in Hebrew is Vatilbash Bigdei Malchus. She put on Bigdei Malchus, clothing of royalty. It doesn't say the word bigdei, clothing of. It says Vatilbash Esther Malchus. Esther enclothed herself in royalty. What does that mean? Who says it's clothing? What does it mean? This is a big question. A very big question. The Talmud brings us this question. Oh my goodness. We didn't even get to the crunch of the story yet. So, start going fast. So, source number 6. It wasn't the third day that Esther put on royalty. The Talmud asks this question: Big day malchus mibayale. It should have written big day, clothing of royalty. So what does it mean Esther put on royalty? It means, says the Talmud, it means shalav shasa ruach hakodesh. It doesn't mean clothing. It means that she was enwrapped in Holy Spirit, in the Divine Spirit. The Divine Spirit had come over her and she was wrapped in it. Now, what merit did she have to be enwrapped in the Divine Spirit? Because she was, in fact, wrapped in royal garments as well. We must not forget that. We must not forget the fact that she was enwrapped in royal garments. In fact, there are commentaries over here. There's the Me'am Loyes. I can also quote to you the Targum Sheni that says, actually describes to us what exactly she was wearing. Fine silks, royal gold-threaded garments. It says over here, she was wearing precious jewels. Jewels, she was adorned with jewels, not just regular jewels. Targum Yonasim ben Uziel says that these jewels came all the way from the land of Tarshish. The Me'am Loyes goes even further and says, Sheheviu Oisan me Africa, from the diamond and gem mines of Africa, assuming southern Africa where the main diamond mines are situated. It says V'na'alei zahav oifaz b'ragleo. She was wearing gold slippers, gold slippers, but she still had ruach hakodesh. She was wrapped in divine spirit. So, what does divine spirit mean? I'm assuming no one over here actually experienced what that means, and I'm with you on that one. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're with the rest of us. Divine spirit, I have some stories, but I'm going to keep going. I'm now feeling the pressure of time. She was enwrapped in malchus. In fact, her face was radiating with royalty. A divine spirit, so the fact that her face actually began shining. Now, what did she merit? How did she merit to have Ruach HaKodesh, divine spirit? So the Bir Agro over here says, it was in a merit because, as he mentions, She'ein Ruach HaKodesh Shera El Al Guf Shaver. Interesting. Divine spirit only rests on someone that has a broken body. Now, broken body doesn't mean that breaking the body. It means spiritually. It means going against, as Chassidus explains to us, when you break your willpower. When you break your willpower, then you cause that the divine spirit enters. And that's why Tanya, by the way, as a side note, that's why the Tanya explains to us that when it comes to the service of God, if we want to truly feel one and find a connection with God, we have to start off with breaking our own willpower. We call it iskafia. Subduing our inclination to want things, to do things based on instinct. But that itself is not even service of God yet. It's a preparation for it. When you subdue yourself, when you break your willpower a little bit and hold back sometimes from doing something, you are creating a broken vessel in yourself, so to speak, and allowing the divine Shekhinah, the divine glory of God to rest inside of you. So it says the Gra, the Goin, the Vilna Goin, that because of a guf shaver, she was fasting for 3 days. So after the fast, it was coming into her. But the Me'am Loyes over here, Me'am Loyes says something very fascinating. You want to know what merit she had for divine spirit? This is not in the source sheet. Very good track. She had a very good character trait. What was her character trait? Shahisa Shaskanis. She was quiet. And this goes hand in hand with what we said before about someone knowing how to keep a secret. She had amazing self-control. Incredible self-control. She was instructed by Mordechai that no one should know her Jewish identity. Nobody should know where she comes from. In fact, her name Esther was from the word haster, aster, concealment. It was concealed in two ways, haster, to conceal. In Persian, istahar actually means beautiful. Not only that, but istahar means the rising star, the morning star. Ayeles hashachar, the morning star, as we will see in her prayer. So she was quiet. So in the merit that she was quiet, that tremendous self-control, the fact that she did not reveal her identity, she merited the divine spirit. So Vatilbash Esther Malchus, she was enwrapped in divine spirit, says the Talmud. Shalavsa ruach hakodesh ksiv hacha v'tilbash ksiv hacha b'ruach lavshas am Yisrael. Okay. Now, so she was enwrapped in garments. What happens next? Back to source number 1. Vata'amayid b'chatzar beis hamelech hapnimis. She stands in the courtyard as we see the drama unfold on her bold, life-risky moves. She stands. Why is she standing? Why is she not walking? Didn't we just say that she had a divine spirit in her? Not just that she had a divine spirit in her, but it actually says in the commentaries explained in the Me'am Lois as well, back to the Me'am Lois, it also says in the Targum Sheni here, she always walked like this, her head bent. She conducted herself like this even in royalty. She didn't like Achashverosh. She never wanted to be Achashverosh's queen. She had to force herself to play the game, to show that she was interested in him. However, now, after fasting for 3 days, when she felt that the divine spirit, she was enwrapped in the divine spirit, it built confidence in her. She had the confidence that now God was with her. And with that, she lifted herself up and stood tall. But why was she standing? We were thinking that she was entering and walking right in. She was going to walk up to the king. The standing looks very, very out of context. So what happened? So the reason why she was held back was because at that very moment, when she entered the courtyard, she suddenly felt the divine spirit leave her. Suddenly. She had built this confidence. She was making her way into the palace. She felt God was with her and she was ready to go to the king. And she went to the king knowing that she's putting her life at risk. But she was going with confidence because God was with her. However, as she was entering the inner chambers, she suddenly felt the divine spirit leave her. Why? Why did it suddenly leave her? What did she do wrong? What did she do wrong? She didn't do anything wrong. However, the place that she was standing caused this to happen. Skipping a few sources, source number 11, back in the Talmud, page 15, side B. Vata'amayid, and she stood. Amar Rabbi Levi. Rabbi Levi teaches us, Kivan shehigia lebeis hatzlomim. Once she reached the chamber of the idols, nistalka hemena shechina. The Shekhinah went away from her. So it was the idols. Because you see, true monarchies, every single king and queen in history, all the way until present day, you think of a king, queen, you think, let's say, the Queen of England, not the same as the king of queens of old, but every monarch always tries to associate themselves with religion. Always have to have some relationship with religion. And very often, if not, it's only a tool for use of power. If they connect it to religion, it makes it easier to bully their kingdom into submission, to listen to them. Now, of course, Achashverosh, the king, was no different. He wanted to have ultimate power over the Persian Empire, and so he had all sorts of idolatry, idols, and idol images in the chamber of his palace. I mean, it stands to reason. It's quite self-understood. So Esther was facing all of these idols. And as she faced the idols, suddenly the spirit leaves her. What does the Talmud say she says next? Right. And she says, and she cries out, Keli, Keli, lama azaftani. My God, why have you forsaken me? This is the famous words coming from verse 2 in chapter 22 of Psalms. Tehillim Perek Chav Beis, chapter 22. That's back in source number 8. Lama natseach al hayelas hashachar mizmor David. For the choir master, Lama natseach, the choir master, al hayelas hashachar, on the rising of the morning star, a song of David. Now this was written, of course, by King David. However, he wrote all of his Tehillim, he wrote all of Psalms with a prophetic vision. And what prophetic vision was he alluding to when he wrote chapter 22? Queen Esther. In fact, the commentaries tell us a lot of the words in chapter 22 alludes to Esther, Queen Esther, and what she was enduring. And she actually used a lot of those words that are used in chapter 22. And she was Ayelas HaShachar. As we said before, Istahar in Persian means the morning, the rising star. Ayelas HaShachar. Many commentaries, by the way, say, what is the morning star? Venus. So, those who are history people and know a little bit about Greek mythology and Roman mythology, Venus is usually associated with who? A Greek god. A woman. Venus. Where do you think they got it from?
Venus love.
Where do you think they got it from? Esther. Maybe they didn't know it. Maybe they did know it. Who knows? Istahar, Esther, was Ayelas HaShachar. And she says, Keli, Keli, lama azaftani. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you abandoned me? Rachek mishuasi divrei shagasi. Why so far from delivering me from my anguished roaring? Right before the inner chamber, and as Mayam Leis gives us an insight, there were 7 chambers altogether from the outer courtyard into the inner chamber, and she made it through 4 of them. You must understand, she was wearing royal garments, which was very, very illegal at the time. She had special garments, which were stately garments, which only she was allowed to wear on certain occasions. If they had a state lunch, if they had, a press correspondence dinner, if she had any time that she was together with the king, she was wearing those garments, stately garments. The outside of that, the queen didn't wear those garments every single day. And it says she put on her royal crown. Queen Esther never put on her royal crown. Didn't usually put it on. She was wearing the most beautiful jewels. Jewels imported from Tarshish, from Africa. Her face was radiating with divine spirit in the outer courtyard. So Me'am Leis actually tells us she managed to walk through the first 4 chambers just like this. Because when you wear a badge and you're wearing the royal crown and you're wearing the royal garments, the outer guards, they are overwhelmed. Whoa, this way. So the first guards, the outer guards, they let her in without even realizing what was going on. Whoa. She's wearing the crown. She's wearing the royal garments. She makes it through the first, the second, the third. It's only by the 4th that they start catching up to her and saying, okay, what's going on over here? This is out of the norm. Does she have an invitation? What's going on? And then she suddenly realizes that she's surrounded.